Max Verstappen cannot drive wheel to wheel. There we go, I've said it. Someone had to. There's no denying that he's quick. He's making Perez look like 𝙁𝘍𝙊𝙆 at the moment, isn't he? But because Max has had the most dominant car of all time for the past few years, we're used to just watching him piss off into the sunset, aren't we? However, with the McLarens rising from the ashes and Norris nipping at Max's little catfish tail, we've finally been reminded of what the real Max is like when he decides to, in his own words, race hard. Which is basically just code for pushing people off the track. Some of the more modern rules actually help him get away with this, believe it or not. Back in the day, you had to leave a car's width on the exit of a turn if there was a car there, regardless whether you were at the apex first or not. Kinda like a gentleman's agreement. If you're ballsy enough to hang it around the outside of T5 at the 𝙁𝘼𝙊𝙆𝙆 in the wet, even 𝙁𝘍𝙾𝙀𝘽𝙊𝙆 will give you the room to do so. You've earned it. Nowadays, as long as you're ahead at the corner and you don't then cross the white line with all four wheels on the exit, you don't have to leave any space for the poor fella that you've just passed, which is a signature Max Verstappen dive bomb. And I'm not just saying it, I've got the receipts to prove it, so let me run you through a few examples of Max's aggressive driving style. There was Abu Dhabi against Lewis. He dives up the inside and runs straight across the natural racing line onto the red and white exit curbs, forcing Hamilton to take evasive action, or have a crash. But because Verstappen didn't have all four wheels off the track, it's alright apparently. There's another one against Lewis, surprise surprise, but this time at Imola. Not really a dive bomb as such, he already had the inside line at the apex, but as the left hand turns into a right, Hamilton has the inside line, yet Max still squeezes him off and over the sausage curbs. At the Red Bull Ring against Leclerc in 2019, Max sent it up the inside against the Monegasque at turn 3, and there was actual physical contact as the move was completed, but no penalty for some reason. Lewis looked to have the move done going into the Descida de Lago in 2021 at Interlagos, but Verstappen run them both off the track by yeeting it at the apex with absolutely zero chance of getting the car stopped in time. Mr. Massey deemed that move entirely legal. Smells a bit fishy to me. As Andrea said when talking to Ted Kravitz after the 2024 Austrian Grand Prix, there are many episodes of this, hinting that he does it an awful lot. But when the same thing happened to Max, like it did when Lewis overtook him in Australia, he is the first one to hit the team radio saying that he's being pushed off the track. If you're gonna dish it out, you've got to be able to take it, son. This rule of passing your opposition as long as you stay on the track might be beneficial to Max's uncompromising driving style, but there is in fact another rule that does the complete opposite. In fact, as Anthony Davidson said on Sky, it was actually implemented purely to stop Max from driving like a whopper. Well, they weren't his exact words, but he implied it. And the rule I'm referring to, of course, is moving in the braking zones. Again, there are many examples of Max doing this. Back in 2016 at the 𝙁𝘼𝙊𝙆𝙆, the Red Bull car drifted to the right-hand side of the track and Raikkonen lined up a move down the inside of Verstappen, when suddenly the door was shut right in his face under braking, resulting in Kimi losing a front end plate. No penalty. 2016 again, but this time at Suzuka. Hamilton is super close around 130R and takes to the inside as they enter the braking zone. Sure as shit, Max veers across the track, meaning Lewis has to take evasive action down an escape road. No penalty. Baku 2018. We all know what happens here, don't we? Ricciardo goes into the back of Verstappen as Max moves across to cover a late lunge on the brakes by the Australian driver. It's always the responsibility of the car behind to pass safely, right? I mean, yeah, it is. But they were both given a reprimand because Max moved late, meaning Danny Ric lost his front downforce, locked up and went into the back of him. A little bit of progress in the penalty system now, because both of them were deemed to be at fault. And finally, for now, when he forced Bottas to take the runoff at T1 in Monza, knowing fine well that if he didn't squeeze Valtteri, the Finn would have had the inside line going into T2 and the better run down to the second chicane as well. A 5-second penalty. A relatively small price to pay for what could have been catastrophic for Bottas. Now, Verstappen gave his reasons as to how all of these incidents could have been avoided in post-race interviews in the past, and in the majority of them he just basically blames the other driver, as he would. But after the 2024 Austrian Grand Prix, where him and Norris collided after a few close calls between the two of them in the laps leading up to the contact, Max said something in the post-race interview which might have gone unnoticed by quite a few people, but not by me. It's either a misinterpretation of the racing regulations or potentially an attempt to try and find a loophole around the rule which was brought in to stop him from moving under braking in the first place. Speaking to Rachel Brooks after the race, she asked him about moving in the braking zone and whether or not he thought he was guilty of it. Of course, he replied no. He went on to say, I know of course in the past it has been a bit of a complaint, but I always move my wheel before I brake, and then of course you brake in a straight line. Now, if you look at the onboard of the incident from Max's point of view, you can see that firstly Max is forced to defend hard after realising in the few attempts previous to this lap that Norris has been lunging down the inside at turn 3. And he actually made the overtake on his last attempt, but Max retook the position off track. I'll save that for another argument. But yeah, Max has gone defensive and crossing that 100-metre board, which is where you brake, you can see he leaves more than a car and a half's width for Norris to drive into. However, this space is now about to close on Lando quickly. By the time the contact is made, there is not a car's width left between Max and the white line. Yes, Norris has room to go across the curb, but at the same time, you have to allow a car's width between you and the white line if there is a car there. After all, this is the entry to a corner and not the exit. So how does this happen then if Max himself denies that he didn't move under braking? Well, do you remember what he said during the interview? I always move my wheel before I brake, and then of course you brake in a straight line. So basically what he's saying there is he wanted to cut back across Norris, but because he moved his steering wheel before he put his foot on the brake, it should be completely legal. I guess that's one way of getting around the rules, even though I don't agree with it, but I don't know if he's been 100% honest there. I think he might be forgetting that there's onboard footage of his car as well. And if we take a look at that, you can see that he does actually turn his wheel left well after he's hit the brakes. Unfortunately, because I don't want to have my house taken off me by Formula 1, I can't show you the footage. But I'll stick a link to the onboard down in the description, and make sure you watch it with the sound on so you can hear the deceleration of the car. Considering he has a reputation for driving like this anytime anyone's close to him, I do think it's time for the FIA to step in and make the rule that they made for Verstappen even clearer for the Dutchman. Because if it's not addressed, it's just going to keep happening, isn't it? Like Andrea said, his driving hasn't been addressed in the past with incidents involving Lewis, so at least this time around it's been flagged, and I think a 10-second penalty probably was the right penalty to choose. But when you've got the championship rival DNFing and Max still picking up 10 points and extending his championship lead, it doesn't really seem fair when you look at it that way, does it? As an F1 fan, I just want to see good racing, and to do that the understanding of the racing regulations has to be clear for everyone. Stewards, racing drivers, team principals, the lot. And I mean, I didn't think it had come to this point where you have to tell a 3-time, looking to be 4-time world champion how to race, but... And I know the rest of the drivers on the grid aren't perfect either. Looking at you, Lance. But if you're the reigning world champion and you have to resort to squeezing people off the track to keep them behind you, it's just not a good look, is it? Don't get me wrong, I like this guy, but as soon as he puts his overalls on, there is absolutely no remorse whatsoever. He takes no accountability for any of his actions. Anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think of the Max Norris incident down below. Do you think the penalty was harsh enough? And are there any other incidents involving Max that I might have missed out? I do have a few more tucked away for a rainy day. I appreciate that F1 videos aren't my normal bag, so normal service will resume in the next one. But if you liked it, feel free to let me know and I can always make some more in the future. Remember to do all the good stuff, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.